What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the ZMAM show as we are taking a look at Greenland, which came out at the very end, or near end of 2020, around December 18th, I think we saw. And you know, Adam, we're going to talk this versus some other disaster movies that we've seen in the past and how Greenland holds up. And personally, this movie was very enthralling. I was enjoying it almost from start to finish.
So for me, I was able to stay focused, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big disaster film guy, so I think this was a harder sell for me. But in spite of that, I will say that the characters' emotions were very believable. Like, things that might feel over the top felt very believable in this movie because of what's happening.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just felt like it's one of the few disaster movies that I could watch from start to finish and be like engaged the entire time.
It was very engaging, and then they didn't do the mistake of getting too many characters involved. I mean, it's centered around this small family. We have Gerard Butler playing the lead, so we always enjoy some Gerard Butler action. And I think his name's John Garrity. He has an estranged wife named Allison, which we find out that basically they have had some marital problems and they're trying to work that out. But from the begin, we already see that that's happening. You know, they're not taking too much time diving into that story. And then they have a son named Nathan, and Nathan loves both his mom and dad equally. I mean, obviously they all want to try and be together. It's just that the wife and obviously Gerard Butler, they're trying to work things out as this is getting into it. But things get ramped up pretty quickly as we find out this comet, and it's funny because they actually talk about the difference between comet and asteroid, which I didn't actually know the difference either, but I believe this one's a comet, and it was named after Arthur C. Clarke, which apparently wrote a book, that talked about what the impact would have been like when the dinosaurs were wiped out and so forth. But anyways, as we move forward in this, we start seeing these news things coming in through the TV, and they're talking about it. And at one point, things really start to get wild because there's supposed to be a birthday party for little Nathan, the son. And all of a sudden, while John is out, this is Gerard Butler's character, he starts getting a call on his phone, and it's saying, "You've been selected."
I think it may have said relocation, but yeah,
Relocation.
He gets a call from
Yes.
the Department of Homeland Security, and they're like, "This is not a test." You know, he gets a text message, "This is not a test. This is an alert. Please answer your phone." And he answers, and they basically say, "Yeah, you can take your wife, your kid, and you each get to take one bag, and you got to meet at this base." And it's just like, it's weird because up until that point, they're just going through like a normal day.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, they know this comet is coming and nobody knows anything's going to happen.
They think it's going to pass by, in fact,
to,
right? They think it's just going to slide right by them.
Yeah, and they go from that to, "Oh, I'm being relocated." And in his head, all of a sudden he's like, something's wrong, something's off. And he has to kind of figure out what it is.
Yeah, and talk about some awkward moments when he gets back to the kid's birthday party, and it's just some close neighbors,
Right.
and it comes up on their TV again, because of course the wife missed it. She's in there doing her hair, those women. Women. But yeah, it comes on the TV, they're all seeing it, and they're like, well, wait a minute. Why is he getting a call and we're not? I mean, they're putting it together pretty fast, which, mind you, it all made sense. I'm loving it, but I'm just like, oh my God, this is so awkward, and because now that you've been chosen, your friends haven't, and you pretty much have to get going. And that scene was tough to watch when they're getting ready to drive off, and the neighbor wife comes over with their daughter, and she is begging and pleading to take their daughter with them, but I got to be honest, Adam, I was on the side of Gerard Butler. I mean, he was right. What are you going to do? What are we going to take the little girl? And when she gets denied at the gate, she's just going to stand there in a group of people all alone and scared? Yeah. There's no way they could have taken her. I mean, the emotions were high. And emotions were high during this entire movie. And that's what gripped me so much. And I know I didn't want to, I'm not comparing it to Kong versus Godzilla, but I was just kind of just making a point here about like when there's a lot of seriousness and the stakes are super high and you have the acting on key with it, you really get gripped into the story, right? And again,
sure,
different movies are the same. I mean, when you're talking about a lizard fighting a monkey, but I just didn't feel like the stakes were high enough in that movie where I felt so engaged that I gave a crap about those characters. I was just kind of like, if you die, you die. In this one, I'm rooting for Gerard Butler and his family. I want them to live. We're meeting people along the way that he gets to meet, some pretty neat people, and some terrible things go down along the way.
Well, and they do a really good job, I think, in the first 10 minutes of the movie of just establishing, they have kind of an average, like probably average suburban
I'd say
lifestyle.
maybe a
And
little above average. I mean, he was a structural engineer. I
yeah,
mean, I think they were living pretty nice in the house and everything.
yeah, it looked like they had a nice house. She was running on a nice treadmill at the beginning. But yeah, no, it like, but they had a very stable, like, it wasn't like this,
Right.
he wasn't like an international spy or anything. He had
No.
a kind of a normal American life. Maybe he was a little
Yeah.
wealthier than some.
Yes.
But and then all of a sudden it's like, I think one of the things this movie does very well is contrast. It has, throughout the entire movie, it has scenes of calm, scenes where you're just getting to know the characters, and then all of a sudden something happens. And I think that's part of why the tension carries throughout the entire movie, is they use that contrast to make it happen.
And I was just going to say, one of the biggest wow moments, and because it didn't take very long again to start really getting into the thick of the story, but when that first, I guess, meteor comes over, and excuse me, it doesn't even come over them. It lands over 1,500 Florida. It hits Florida, one of the main cities, and I can't remember which one. It sent a shock. It sent a shock wave over 1,500 miles away. And when that shock wave, he walks out. Gerard Butler walks out, and he kind of looks down the street or whatever, and suddenly in the distance you see something doesn't look right, and then it just comes through, shatters windows. I sat back and I was just, I mean, even though I've seen disaster movies, we've seen these things. I was just kind of like, whoa, that was a pretty, it really just kind of like, it just took you from, a 5 to like an 11. You're just like, okay, it's on now. And that's pretty much what this movie does. Like Adam says, the contrast, the moving along of the story, the moments that happened all felt real. They weren't like just these randomized events. I mean, it's things that would happen because people are selfish, John Garrity and his wife and his kid get their wristbands, and then they become like hot property, right? Because you don't have the wristband, you're not getting on the plane. And then tell me you weren't reeling when they're getting ready to get on that plane, and then they find out that the little boy has diabetes, and they refuse them. Yeah. I was like, you dirty bleeping bleeps.
It's funny because there's a scene later where Allison, the mother, is talking to a military officer about what would you do if you were in my situation and your son, after they're kind of taking off the plane and everything, and she looks back at Allison, this military officer, and says, I wasn't picked.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I think in that moment you're like, it's almost like you can relate to the military people because not all of them get to go, and they're just going through the motions and helping people. Yeah. So, when they get someone that can't go, they're just like, well, those are the rules. But yeah,
and I can appreciate the movie for sticking to those moments, because otherwise then it's just like, oh, sure, go ahead, we'll sneak you on or whatever, right? It brings in more drama and realism too. I think there were some moments, and we talked about this just a tiny bit beforehand, but we're talking about like maybe things that maybe they wouldn't go down exactly like that. Like there was moments when Allison is looking for her son in a FEMA camp or whatever, sorry, one of those health camps or whatever, because he was taken at some point in the movie. But either way, this guy actually pulls her to the side, like, ma'am, tell me what's going on. I'll help you. I mean, the fact that anybody would have the time to do that during all of this chaos. And there was a few moments like that throughout the movie, which
a little far-fetched.
It wasn't enough to disengage you. It was just, you're just kind of,
I agree.
I just kind of stopped for a second. I was kind of like, but whatever, we get on with it, and things still move forward. But yeah, the very exciting moments, they didn't overdo when the comets were crashing, or even the fragments or whatever. But when they did hit, you were definitely feeling the impact, from the seat of your chair. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, back to what you were saying about that original hit, they always seem to come out of nowhere. I mean, I think that's why the disaster scenes in this movie were so well done, is that you just never knew when they were going to hit. Yeah. Because they would just be doing their thing, and all of a sudden you'd see a streak in the sky, and then there'd be an impact, and then there'd be something that they'd have to deal with.
Yes.
And it just, it was very suspenseful. And,
so
as opposed to a movie.
Yeah, play off of that, because think about Armageddon. when there was only a few different impacts they actually showed, because obviously they end up stopping the main comment, but there was a few ones, and there's a few moments where the scientists, like, it goes to a scene and he goes, the next one's about to hit right over Tokyo, and literally they show the comet coming in real quick and hitting Tokyo, or it hits over France, Paris, or something like that. And it was just kind of like, it kind of took the suspension away a little bit, because it's like, I don't need you to tell me that it's hit. I mean, I know what the Eiffel Tower is. I can watch it happening. You know?
Yeah.
So you're totally right. They did it so well that those suspenseful moments felt great. You had no idea they were coming, other than the news telling us this one's hitting in 5 seconds, and literally in 5 seconds they show it happening. Like, well, thank you for telling me. I don't know how I would have picked out that asteroid falling to the Earth.
It's funny that, because I feel like not all of them, but a lot of disaster movies telegraph. And there almost has to be something else. But not to sound like a broken record, but this one has those low moments where you're getting to know the characters, you're understanding the characters' emotional angst as they're going through this, and then boom, something happens. They're dealing with a shockwave, or they're driving through a meteor shower in upstate New York.
Yeah.
It's just, and these are the things they have to deal with while they're trying to figure out if they're going to be able to survive when the big one hits in a few days.
Right.
So it's crazy.
And if you're kind of on the fence on this one, you're like, disaster movie, and I'll tell you this. So I've seen 2012, I've seen Deep Impact, I've seen Armageddon. I didn't see Geostorm, which apparently was another kind of survival one that actually Gerard Butler was in. I didn't see it. I think it was just okay. But what I want to note for this movie, I think it does a lot of things better than like what Roland Emmerich did with like 2012, and some, it's because in that movie, it was like too much going on. There's all this crazy cinematic effects going on everywhere. Way too many characters. You're just kind of like, and goofy characters, just kind of cliche characters. So that one was kind of wild. Armageddon did a nice job of a mixture between, I think, levity, comedy in between, and also the serious moments. I mean, by the end, when, Bruce Willis takes AJ and tosses him back in that airlock, I mean, and AJ's screaming him, don't do this. I mean, you're kind of like, oh man, I didn't see this one coming, and
right.
it's things are at their highest, and it's a great hero moment, for Bruce and all company. And then when you also look at Deep Impact, where it has just almost too much drama, too much lull time, all this story time. And here's a funny thing, Adam. I just want to mention to you, and well, we're just on anyways. So when we were all younger, I mean, this came out when we were like, I don't know, high school or something like that. We're going.
That's about right.
For you young ones, we were going to a thing called malls. Okay, these are these places where there's actually shops inside, and you actually can go in or whatever. Anyways, so we were at the theater, and around the same time, there was another movie that came out called Deep Rising. Okay, Deep Rising was a movie about basically this underwater monster that takes over this cruise ship, and it's infested. And anyways, this crew comes out, and it's just a sci-fi kind of horror action flick or whatever like that. So Vortri and I had already seen both of these movies, and we were like, well, what do we want to go see this week? And for some reason, I had Deep Impact in my mind, but what I wanted to say was Deep Rising. So we went, and he kept asking me, he's like, are you sure you want to see this movie again? I'm like, yeah, dude, it's gonna be exciting. It was fun. And he's like, okay. We get in there, and literally, it starts with the credits, and I was like, oops. I chose the wrong movie. But yeah, those two came out right around the same time. Yeah, total mistake. I don't think he's forgiven me to this moment that we've had to watch Deep Impact twice in the theater. So both times were pretty excruciating. But either way, this movie does a lot of things better than its predecessors. And yeah, if you're looking for that thrill ride and also a little emotional ride along the way too, I'd say this is definitely your bet. Any other extra thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, and I just to add to the contrast between what's different about this versus what's different about a lot of disaster films, I think feel like action movies in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, like the things that the action is the characters tensing up and doing things in prep. This almost felt more like a character study / suspense movie that took place during a catastrophic event. So I think because of that, it was a fresh take on it.
Yeah.
But for those who are really feeling that action jive, it's definitely got its moments of action, but it's different.
Yeah.
So you and I both liked it, but I would just say that know that it's the down moments are more down, but but it allows for those moments of contrast. So it's a different style, but both you and I think it
Yeah,
works.
it definitely did. So, fun movie. Check it out. Greenland 2020. We had put it off for a little bit, but we were able to come back around and nail it. So, hope you enjoyed this little talk on it all. Let us know in the comments what you thought about the movie. If you really enjoyed it, or if you think it was lacking in some sense. I'd say you'd have to really fight for this one for an argument, just because I thought the actors were doing such a good job working well with each other. You've seen movies, where like you have the dad, the mom, the kids element, and it just doesn't seem like they're really jiving. It just seems like it's forced. But when I
Yeah.
saw Gerard Butler with his son, I felt like that was his son. The moments
Yeah.
with
Agreed.
his wife, even though they were estranged kind of in the beginning, but building that love and the respect back up as the movie went on, I felt it. And the things that they both had to go through, like I never was like, oh, I can't stand her or I can't stand him. I mean, there were other characters outside of them that did bad things that I couldn't stand, but that's because they did such a great job. I mean, it's because they were so terrible that made the moments even better. So definitely get a chance, go out and check that out, and yeah, we'll be looking to see what's around the corner for the next review. And Adam, any other last comments or thoughts?
Nope, I think it's a solid watch. If you're into disaster movies and willing to check out one that's done a little differently, I think you'll like this one.
Right on. So this is the Z-Man Show. Mike and Adam at you, and we will catch you at the next review.
See you next time.